self-indulgent and narrow societies on the planet. It's been utterly groomed into this horrible state of mind of just blind, naked self-interest. We have in America, a volunteerism that I believe it's in the companion guide. You remember what it is, Tom? Remember the statistics on volunteers in America? But it was colossal. I couldn't believe it when I read it. 45%. It was amazing to see how many people, most people, by the way, that volunteer are actually in the lower income brackets, which I found fascinating too. Those that are most rewarded in the system are much less likely to contribute. It's those that actually see the basis of humanity, that live in the common world. They're the ones that want help. So that's another tidbit for you to consider. So people will do so. They've proven it. We have a huge volunteer, nonprofit volunteer sector, if you will. And in fact, there's a book I recommend that talks about that explicitly called The End of Work by Jeremy Rifkin. I recommend that to you because it's a really brilliant point that he makes. And he's not actually an advocation of what we talk about. I try to get in touch with him, it doesn't matter. But he at least points this out specifically, that in the future, because of the automation of labor, because of the lack of ability for people, majority of people to be employed, other sectors will come into fruition. And they'll be very different. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that particular angle, but his understanding of the nonprofit sector as a base support, we're in a society where everyone is trained to be as capitalistic and ruthless as possible, is an amazing, to me, testament of some deep down human attribute that really does want to help each other, and they're willing to do so. So I checked that book out if you want more information on that point.
Okay, this man here in the front's been waiting for me. I'll come back to you. No, I'm sorry, no, it's this guy.
Hi, Peter. Paul, I came all the way from Chicago to talk to you long flight. So basically, forgive me if I kind of go on for just a moment. Just grant me a little time because I put in time to get here. I've been working kind of behind the scenes on how to do that transition that this gentleman and the more mature gentleman in the back spoke about, and I think that it would be a fantastic way, but I wanted to kind of preface that by asking you some questions. So people want to do more, and many simply don't have the time, resources, or influence to get out there and say, hi, this is what we would like to do, how about you jump on board? Because they have jobs, because they have debt, because they're going to continue to have bills and things that are going to keep them mentally drained outside of what media is doing already. So how would you suggest the tired people do? Well, what would you suggest for these tired people to do, or how to get them into a transitory state outside of simply spamming links to their friends to try to get them to check out this information?
Well, again, that's a I think a per case basis type of question. You know, for the average wage slave that's racked in debt and can't think about anything, forget any type of social activism. They're not concerned about the Middle East wars. You know, everything's locked in. This is actually, in my mind, I think, intrinsically built in the system as an aside. The distraction of this oppressive deprivation that permeates, especially now, serves the establishment in a strange way because it keeps people so narrowly encompassed, and that's essentially the point. So they don't have the means or the energy to think about these things because they can barely take care of themselves. It's a sad state of social control. I think is somewhat realistic in the minds of those that are around that want to maintain their power establishment. But I don't want to pull out. It's not a conspiratorial notion. It's a natural element, gravitation of the system for people to maintain their positions. But to answer your question, I think you have to take it on a per-case basis and speak with the position, each individual, get their background, and get them to relate the fact that what they're doing most likely, well, first of all, their entire position, of course, is oppressive because of the system, so there's point one, and then you hone up to their actual level of their actual personal relationship level of what their occupation is. Do they have a family? You see what I mean? You can't just I can't blanketly tell you, or in fact, goes for almost any kind of communication, some universal to approach anyone. But if they're stuck in a position of debt, you're going to have a hard time one way or another. If they're narrowly defined, they can barely support themselves. But just remind them that the oppressive system is what's keeping them down, and if they want out of it, they have to make some type of stride. You know?
I mean, that's definitely a good point. It kind of possibly leads into the next question I had about in the film, a dollar amount was referred to in terms of what it costs to go to war and how much, if that money were to be put towards building infrastructure, how it could have been done on a global basis. Is there a particular dollar amount that it would cost or would take to initiate either a survey or building this test city?
Yeah, that's a good question. I asked Jacques about the test city, and I can't remember the carrying capacity of that city, but at that stage he said it was rather small. He quoted about $1 billion, which I think might have been rather low. It's really hard to financially foreshadow when you. The survey is something that really has almost been done in a lot of ways already by private corporations. It's simply getting that data. But we can't even get straight data out of the oil companies. I mean, it's really hard when you have proprietary institutions that want to protect their self-interest. And since scarcity is one of the biggest drivers of demand, this is profitable demand, you enter into a world that you really can't get honest information. So it's really just stopping it, making them give information that they have at one level, and then it's using advanced technologies to scour the earth and survey, which there are many forms of radiation technology that can be used to see lots of attributes. So there's a lot of technical things you can do, which would be extremely expensive. In my view, it would be done without expense. Right. I really, because you really can't build this thing for the basis of money. You have to go straight to the resources and resource management and do it efficiently. You have to do it right, not with the the cost efficiency, which will inevitably hinder you. So I really can't answer that question. It's hard to.
And it was only in the sense to reference to
I've got another one. So that's 2 questions, yeah. Okay. Give somebody else a chance. Anybody on the right?
I'll talk to you after.
Yeah. Anybody on the right? Guy in the middle here? Yeah, over there, please, Nathan. Brown t-shirt.
Hello. One of the problems I've found in society today is a lot of people have such short attention spans. So when I send them a link to this film and they see 2 hours and 40 minutes, they immediately close it, and I can't handle that. I can't watch that. Anything that's more than 3 minutes long, people just don't have the time. They're too busy playing their games, watching their vain entertainment, X Factor and all this nonsense. And every time you send, I have a lot of friends online that I talk to, I send them links, I show them these things, and they just simply cannot be bothered. What do we do about people like that? How do we get these people to see and to realise and to understand these are the kind of things that they need to be interested in and need to talk about and think about?
I think in communication you just have to be more severe in your reasoning for watching the film. One of the kind of second thoughts that, inadvertent realities of the way the films are constructed is they're in sections. So I recommend maybe sending sections. Say, ooh, watch this section on the monetary system. It's part 2. Or if people that are interested in sociology and human behavior, ooh, we got to see this section on part 1 regarding human behavior and human nature. I don't know, try to do something like that. But I hear you. I made the film 2 hours. I could have made it much longer, by the way.
I wish you did.
And I almost broke it into 2 films, but I wanted to be as concise as possible because not miss anything. Because I got so tired of people complaining about addendum and all this, because it just brings up everything that it doesn't explain it. Because it's a 2-hour film. The intent wasn't to be fully based there, but moving forward certainly was. So I did that distinctly because I knew that I believe that most people really do watch it. I mean, 4 million views on YouTube, and some people have said they've seen it like 20 times. I'm like, God, you really sat through the thing 20 times?
I've seen it about 8.
Well, see, there you go. See, so it's not universal. So if you encounter people that simply don't want to take the time, I guess just move on and go to the next subject.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That's left again.
Very short question. Hello. Are you planning to do the next movie about how to get there?
Well,
you have a lot of ideas, I'm sure.
The thing about how to get there, it's not really conducive to a movie format, because as I was mentioning, and that's why I ended it the way I did, is a very overarching aesthetic gesture, emotional gesture, a cathartic gesture. The transition is so unpredictable. There's so many things that could happen that would completely change the path, not necessarily the direction of where we want to go, but who knows what could happen as the instability that's obviously showing itself now continues to go. So I'm going to make more presentations in the movement and more documents in the movement. I've talked about it at length in different contexts. But I do plan to make a transition, narrated, simple, though not a movie, I won't have any music, to describe other angles for that.
Because the ability to dream is the strongest and the main ability of human being.
Sure. Yes. Thank you.
There's a guy in the middle there with a red top on. He's been waiting for a while. Get to him, Nathan. Thanks. It's all right.
Good afternoon. Just want to say thanks for a great film. My question is just purely curious, following on from that gentleman's comment over there about trying to shorten the information so that people can. I'm wondering, I'm sure you've been asked, or wondering if you thought it was possible to reduce the ideas in all three films into maybe 17 or 24 minutes. I'm talking about possibly doing have you ever considered doing a TED Talk, something like that?
All three films, the first film is its own life, because it was before my interest emerged in this sustainable resource-based economy, which emerged at the end of Addendum. So there's kind of a divide between the three films right in the center as far as their contexts. Obviously they're interrelated in the corruption level and all of that stuff, and what the system reinforces and all of that. I have offers for TEDx I'm going to be doing. There's different TED arrangements, and obviously I will do my best in the 20-minute time frame when I have those opportunities. And like tomorrow, I'm reducing my what usually is like a 3-hour type of lecture to 45 minutes, which has been brutal enough. So I'm doing my best.
Yeah.
Mr. Dowling.
Hey, nice to see you again.
Good to see you.
Little curious, and perhaps off the general theme here, but just on a personal basis, I've heard you describe yourself as the de facto leader of the Zeitgeist movement, and having...
De facto founder of the Zeitgeist movement.
Beg your pardon. Nonetheless, the question is still valid. Having been to a number of these meetings over the last couple of years, I was just wondering, does the notion of pressure upon you, has that grown, increased as the movement has grown in stature? Do you feel any sort of weight of responsibility for... There's a lot of what do you expect us to do? These sort of questions come up time and time again, and I just wonder how that affects you personally.
Well, I've been able to reconcile that internally with the basic understanding, which I talk about a lot, is that I'm only one individual. While people might look to me, and obviously people are asking me questions, which I appreciate, and I have done a great deal of research, and that's pretty much all I'm doing now, so I like to provide as much information as I can, and hopefully that will be digested and built upon. Simultaneously, I've been able to condition myself to not feel like I am now responsible for anything, and I'm just like anyone else. And I say that constantly to people. As a founder, I'm an initiator. I definitely don't like the term leader, as you know from my general rhetoric, because it implies that I have all the answers, or Jacques as a leader or anything. We don't need leaders anymore. We need people to actually be educated. Leaders is a corrupt concept. The leadership and peasant relationship, I can't think of another word for it. Leadership and public relationship is really